Hello, this is Henry Quillian. Welcome to Litigation Fundamentals with Henry Quillian here at Taylor English Duma in Atlanta. Today we're going to talk about e-filing, which is a rage running across the state of Georgia and so many different places. We have guest speakers who will be talking about their particular system, which is PeachCourt. For those out there in the world, please remember that this is an informational video. It's not giving legal advice, but it's trying to give you practical pointers as to how to practice law, particularly in this new world involving e-filing. We have a room full of people, many of whom have a lot of experience in every kind of litigation, many of whom have a lot of experience in e-filing, and there will be an interactive discussion. You will hear voices that ask questions. Today we have a special guest, Ryan Roenick, who is the President and Chief Operating Officer of PeachCourt. And Ryan is a civilian and leads the company's work with the courts and the state governments. In other words, a businessman, is that what you're referring to there when you say civilians? Because I think we're all civilians. And we also have Jay Bland, who is the Vice President of PeachCourt. They will be interchangeably doing various things during the presentation. Jay is a lawyer, a graduate of Cumberland Law School, and he has traveled over 30,000 miles around Georgia talking to lawyers and courts about the e-filing systems. Because and I'm sure they'll tell you this, it's only been this year that PeachCourt has been launched, and I know that it's being used in several courts in which I litigate. This is a great opportunity for us to learn how to do it ourselves. The paralegals can become pros, and the attorneys can learn how to do it when they're in a pinch to make sure the filings are done timely and correctly. So with that, I would like y'all to give a warm welcome to our two guests, and I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Henry. So one of the things that you bring to every meeting, in fact, there are two things. When I was growing up, I used to be a consultant for a really large consulting firm. So much like a large law firm, you only have yourself to sell. You don't have a product to sell, nothing to shrink wrap and mail. You can't buy 3 or 4 pounds of what you offer. You're only selling yourself. And so a partner for whom I worked, and you probably have met a witty and wise partner like this at some point, and he said, name the 2 things that everybody brings to a meeting. And I thought, pen and paper. This was before iPads. He said no. I thought, your ears and your eyes. He said no. Everybody brings to a meeting 2 things: ignorance and preconceived notions. He said, so when you're in the meeting, figure out everyone you're talking to has some degree of ignorance, otherwise they wouldn't be there. And they have some degree of preconceived notions. They've put together some agenda in their mind that explains what's about to happen. And they've already, to some degree, evaluated it. And you do that too. You have to. When time is pressed, you have to figure out, okay, I know what this is. I know I want to get out of it. I know what this client means to me. I know what this relationship could do. I know what winning means. I know what losing means. He said, so figure that out about the people in the room, but also figure out what it means to yourself. So what ignorance are you bringing to the room, and what preconceived notions are you bringing to the room? So we bring our ignorance, and we try to wear that as a badge of honor. We try to ask as many questions as we can, because if you've seen one law firm, you've seen one. And if you've seen one filing, you've seen one. So PeachCourt exists to make your lives a little bit easier. It can't write documents for you, although it does help with some of the filing. It can't make you choose good clients or practice good law or put good content into a document. What it can do is help you get that from your desk to the docket faster and more reliably than the alternative. So today we're going to do a couple of things. Principally, we want to show you what PeachCourt looks like and acts like. Some of you have seen it, and we hope that you'll call out the good things. You can hoot and holler, both, if you want to. Or you can do a quiet golf clap. Either way, let us know what you liked about the system. For those of you who haven't used it, we hope you'll ask questions, and anyone is fair game to answer the question. So we hope that you'll point out some things on the screen that you like, and that you'll ask us to pause, which we'll be happy to do, to go into some more detail about how it works. Today we'll be doing 2 exercises that will get you comfortable with PeachCourt. Principally, that's the goal. again, to get you comfortable with PeachCourt. So when you have the opportunity to file into one of about 100 courts with which you're connected now, it'll be about 200 courts by this time next year, you'll be comfortable. The two exercises are initiating a new case, and we'll initiate a general civil action into one of the many counties that we're connected where you typically file. And we'll also file into an existing case. Now, the case initiation we will actually click the button and send it off to the court. And we'll send it off to Fayette Superior Court, where we know you have a case, so you'll get a feel for exactly how that works. And then with the existing case, we'll simulate a filing going into that case. We won't actually file it because that'll be a real case, and you certainly don't want to cause that sort of trouble. So you'll see right up until the actual filing. You can visit PeachCourt.com at any time. Take a look at the list of courts with which we're connected now. It grows by about 10 to 12 every month. So stay tuned. If the court you're interested in filing into isn't there now, it probably will be soon. And you can also visit PeachCourt.com to register. It takes about 2 minutes to register. The registration is for each attorney. So each attorney is registered, his or her bar number, email address, and all that. And with each attorney's registration, you can add one additional email address, a courtesy copy address, so that not only does the attorney, but also the assistant, paralegal, what have you, will also get a copy of every email message PeachCourt sends. And email is the way that PeachCourt communicates. So you'll get a confirmation message, you'll get a second message with links to the documents that are stamped, you'll get notifications of a password being reset. All of that happens through email. Okay, before we get started, any questions about what we'll cover today? We've been asked to do the 4-hour version. Normally this is an 8-hour presentation. I'm sorry. I'm being told, no, the 30-minute version. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to show some things on the screen. And e-filing works even when you have a screen smaller than this. So you don't have to shoot it on the wall if you don't want to. It makes it easier to read sometimes. We are here at PeachCourt.com, and we're going to log in. Now, you'll already have an account by the time today is over because you'll all register if you're not already. It takes just a moment to register, and then once you log in, you'll see this screen called My Cases. And My Cases lists all of your cases. We named it that way so it'll be easy to remember. Now when you start, that'll be a blank list because you haven't e-filed into any cases yet. As soon as you e-file into a case, you'll see that case listed there. So Jay has been a busy guy. He's almost as busy as you. He has 6 pages of cases listed. He could click on any of those links and jump right into the docket for that case. He could file into that case with just a click. So that's a shortcut button that you see on the right side. Okay. You can resort this list by court, initiation date. Should be an easy way for you to jump back into a case that you've already filed into. Our first exercise today is to create a very new case from scratch. So let's do that. Clicking New Case at the top of the page under the logo gets you into this page. On this page, you'll see a couple of questions that should look familiar. For those of you who create the case initiation forms, you'll notice a couple of similarities. So let's file into Fayette Superior. Fayette Superior was our very first court to open back in December of 2014. And so we're closing in on about 9 months of e-filing in Fayette. Once you choose Fayette Superior, now you choose your case category, general civil action or domestic relations. So we choose general civil, and then we have a list of the case types that fall under that umbrella. Any suggestions?
Med-mal.
Med-mal. Okay.
Add some wrongful death just for the heck of it.
Yeah. So we'll choose. Jay has chosen tort as the case type, and then specifically, as you know from within the case initiation form, you choose up to 2 types. And so Jay has chosen those 2. If you ever need to revise that, once you go to a future step within the process, you can click Previous to come right back. So it's real easy to adjust all the questions and answers before you submit. Okay. Next, you'll see a couple of fields that you can ignore if you're filing this type of case. I'll just quickly mention what those are. Anytime someone tells you you can ignore things, probably your brain says, I doubt that I can ignore that. Let me investigate. Okay, the first is to add email addresses for e-service. Not applicable to initiating a case, but once we're in the second exercise, when we're doing a subsequent filing, you'll see how helpful it is to use e-service. Secondly, if you had a related case, and this typically only comes up during a domestic relations filing, you'd list the related case number there. So we'll skip those two for now and click next to move on. PeachCourt is a website, and so that means you can access it from any, you see better now? Thank you. PeachCourt is a website, so you can access it from any computer that's connected to the internet. So you don't have to install any special software. Any computer you have will work just fine. Okay, parties next. So we'll add a plaintiff and a defendant. You could repeat as necessary, depending on how many plaintiffs and defendants you need to add. When you click Add Plaintiff, you have the opportunity to fill in as many of these fields as you'd like. The only required fields are last name and first name. Okay. You can list an individual or an entity. Bound to happen. And feel free at any time, if you need to add an additional plaintiff, you can come back to this page and add it. So we've added a plaintiff, and we'll click the box to show that we are representing. Okay, now on the defendant side, again, you can add one or more as necessary. You have to add a little bit more information. As you might imagine, it's going to be difficult to effectuate service unless you include the defendant's physical address. So in addition to the last name and first name, Jay will enter the physical address where the sheriff's office can find this person. And it makes sense because you're filing into Fayette County that this will be a Fayette County address. If you needed to add an additional defendant who lives outside the county, you can do that too. The only trick with that is you have to handle service yourself. So either you'd use a private process server, or you would ship the documents yourself to the sheriff's office in the other county. For service within Fayette County, since that's where we're filing, you have a couple options. You can file an acknowledgement of service. We all know what that means. The second option is to hold for a special process server, a private process server. That's an option you can use to ask the clerk's office to print the service packet, prepare it, and hold it there for someone you designate to pick it up and effectuate service that way. So the clerk's office will be happy to do that. Third option, similarly, the clerk will prepare the service packet and then hand it over to the sheriff's deputy. That typically means printed and put in the wire basket and the 3-ring binder or log that the sheriff's office signs. Eventually that'll become electronified, and we'll be able to have that information flow immediately and electronically into the sheriff's office. It's probably a couple years away, but not a decade away.
As far as appointment of a special process server, is this only usable for somebody that's has a standing order to be a process server, or can the same process server that the package is printed for go get an order from the judge in the case?
The clerk will release it to the person that you designate, and so you bear the responsibility to make sure that person is authorized. So it could be a 1-2 punch, if you will, to get certified at that time.
And the local rules they have for each county will stay in effect. So right now, if you needed in order to use a special process server in Coweta County, you would still need that.
Okay.
Doesn't change any of that.
The fourth and final option is service coordinated by filer. That's you. So if you choose to coordinate that service yourself by having a private process server pick up the service packet in your office, if you'll choose to email the documents to someone, or if you're handling service for a defendant in another county, you would choose that fourth and final option. You would coordinate it. That means the clerk won't expect to print anything, and the sheriff's office in that county won't expect to receive anything printed. Any questions about service? Pretty straightforward and very vital. So we want to make sure you feel comfortable with that.
Are you going to tell us how we get the summonses?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think when we tell you that, I think you'll like it. I think you'll like how this works. So that's a good lead. I've set myself up for that. Okay, so Jay, are we ready to go?
Yeah, we
Okay.
chose Sheriff's Department.
We did. Sheriff's Department, because that lets us show you some really neat features of PeachCourt. So we'll choose the Sheriff's Department.
It's like when your kid has one cool trick and you make everybody watch. That's our kid's trick there.
He'll play the piano, even if you don't want to. Okay, so we have one on each side. Ready to go forward? Okay, moving on. Documents. This is just a slightly more complicated process than attaching a document to an email message. It's essentially the same idea. So, a couple things you want to keep in mind. There are 3 pieces of information, 3 choices you need to make on this page. You want to pick the type of document you're uploading. Optionally, but we recommend you give it a description to talk about what kind of document it is. And then thirdly, actually click the button to upload it. So let's go through those 3 steps. First, choose the type of document. There's a short list here when you're initiating a case. When you're doing a subsequent filing, it's a much longer list. So pick your complaint, pick your petition. So we've chosen complaint, that makes sense. And then Jay has added a description. That description helps a couple things. 1, it's in the email receipt you get, so you know that is the thing that you submitted. 2, the clerk's office sees that. That gives them a pretty good indication of what you expect to happen. And 3, that's the description that shows up on the docket. So if you just have the word complaint, probably complaint, you could probably figure out what that is. Later, though, if you're filing a motion, probably knowing it's a motion for summary judgment helps everybody who's viewing that document. Okay?
Can
That's
you call it
optional.
complaint for extremely large judgment against bad doctor?
For example.
Sort of pretrial publicity.
Right, to the degree that you want to influence that by wordsmithing, we're all for it. There's no limit, I should say, on the length of what you can put in that bit.
Be subject to the ethical rules and all that.
Which is a good point to bring up. There's a chief judge in a not too far away circuit who, when addressing about 100 members of the local bar, said, "Ladies and gentlemen, just want you to know that e-filing will allow you to make all the same mistakes you make now, just faster."
That is true.
He was the only person who wasn't laughing. Everyone else thought that was funny. He said, so you're on your own in terms of making mistakes. Okay, are we set, Jay?
Let's choose our file.
Just click choose file, and if you can get to the document on your desktop or on a network drive, a shared drive, you can get to it to attach it to PeachCourt. So sometimes you may have a document management system that allows you to save as a PDF, and you end up saving that locally. Maybe you have a network drive where you share all your documents. If you can get to that folder on your computer, you can get to that folder through PeachCourt. You need to save the document as a PDF. And Microsoft Word and WordPerfect and a lot of other software can do that. So you shouldn't have to pay for any software to save as a PDF. If you happen to have the document electronically, and the document does not need a physical signature, verification, for example, needs your client's signature. But if it's a complaint like this, you don't have to print it. You can save it as a PDF. And the signature, we know there are some folks who have filed in federal court. Tell me about the signature. Anyone want to weigh in on how you do an electronic signature?
Just type it.
Just type it, S/S, and your full name, and that's it. So you don't actually have to. You can, you may, if you'd like to, print hand sign the signature, you can do that. If you happen to have the signature as an image, you want to drop that in place. But we are working really hard so that clerks and deputies in clerks' offices across the state are comfortable with all those methods of signature that the amended rules for Superior Court allow. So if you have any questions about signatures, we can talk about it now, or you can ask.
Is that something that you find in local rules?
Those rules about
Signature
signatures?
requirements? I would just think these are things that haven't even been contemplated before because there was no such thing.
Early in this whole process, we did depend on local rules, circuit by circuit. Luckily, several months ago, the Supreme Court adopted some amended rules for Superior Court. You have a copy of those in your bag. And anyone who'd like an additional copy, an electronic copy, you can email us and we'll be happy to provide one. But one of the things it addresses is signatures. So that clarifies a few bit. Another thing that it addresses is the time of filing and the relief that the court may provide if there's a technical problem. And so when we get to the end, let's go over some of the rules. That way we'll have one concentrated point about that. But the rules really make it clear.
Will the system kick the document back if you accidentally attach a Word document?
It will not allow you to upload anything except a PDF. There's no limit to the number of PDFs you can upload. If it's appropriate for you to file, then you go ahead and upload it. No limit to the number of pages in each PDF. No limit to the number of pages overall. No limit. We have uploaded some enormous documents, and you won't have a problem.
if you've got exhibits A through E attached to your complaint, do you file them as separate filings or with the complaint?
Perfect question. I'll reiterate that so everybody on camera for time in memoriam can hear what a good question that was. So the question was, if you have exhibits, do you include those exhibits in the same PDF as the complaint or petition, or do you upload those separately? And with PeachCourt, you include those with the complaint or petition. In federal court, you upload those separately. With PeachCourt, if it is related, an exhibit or an attachment, include it with your primary document. The first page of each document will get stamped, unless it's a special circumstance like a sheriff's entry of service or a proposed order, then it won't get stamped. But what we're talking about with the complaint, motion, petition, the first page gets stamped, and you really want just that first page to get the stamp. That's a great question.
When you were saying number of files, there's no limitation there, does that also mean there's no limitation on the file size?
Exactly. So no limitation on the number of pages, the file size, the number of documents. If you need to file it, we encourage you to upload it. The only restrictions here are that all of the documents you're submitting need to be for this case. So you can't do more than one case as documents in the same city.
The way you're describing, you're saying if I've got a complaint with exhibits A through E, it's got to be one PDF.
Correct.
That's gonna affect the quality of the main document though, because if that can be a separate document and I convert a Word to PDF, it's very clean. But if I have to scan it with the attachments, it's not going to look as good.
That can happen. Certainly that
Right.
can happen.
But that's just the way it is.
It is.
Okay.
As high a resolution as you can scan it will help the quality, and since there's not a file size limit, it may take just a few extra seconds to upload that document. But that's the way to go.
And you also, if you're worried about that, you could upload them separately and put a note at the end to the clerk that said, I'm uploading my exhibit separately because of this reason, and they'll still accept it. That's just the best practice is to have it in one so they don't get lost.
I'm still on the signature thing, sorry. I pulled the paper out of your bag, and I'm still not really clear here. Are you saying that all courts that are accepting PeachCourt should accept an electronic signature now, and that you should, because otherwise you're back to what he's saying, where you would have to run something through a scanner. So if you want to, and once we get to the point where we're looking at documents on there, if they're OCR, you'd be able to search them and all of that if someone did it that way, as opposed to repeating it through.
Right. The best quality is, and you don't, this is not a rule yet, but the Administrative Office of the Court, Supreme Court, is very carefully looking at requiring not just PDFs, but searchable PDFs. We'll come back and talk with you about that. That's a whole different animal. And if you're scanning a document, you may end up with the same situation you've had for 20 years, which is when you fax a document, it's really just a picture. And that picture could be grayscaled and shifted and twisted, and you won't be able to search for any words within there. So you could see the motivation to get searchable PDFs. Executing that or delivering on that requirement is a bit of a
I would
challenge.
think the court would be the #1 fan of that.
Yes. Yes.
When they're trying to read people's brains.
To your point, the signature rule is very broad. So you didn't see, you may use S-block signature. The reason this is the first round of e-filing rules in Georgia, so they kind of said, let's write something that'll work and then we'll trim it down as we need to. But every court is now accepting S-block signatures.
What about an image of your signature?
You can do that too. You can do an image of your signature that's been pasted in. You can photocopy or scan a written signature and the S-block as well.
And that's for all signatures, including certificate of service, everything.
Right. And those apply to any e-filing system that exists now or will exist are governed by those rules. Okay, question here? Yes, sir.
If I upload a PDF and it's searchable, can opposing counsel search it, and also could opposing counsel see the metadata on that if I haven't stripped it out myself?
So the question for everybody is, if you upload a searchable PDF, the great thing about that is it's searchable. Are there any downsides to any information that you're uploading with that searchable PDF? So the PDF itself is going to stay intact. So any metadata with the PDF that's generated by Microsoft Word or searchable PDF, With it comes behind the scenes probably your firm name, the version of the software, the date when you created it, your name or your initials, whoever paid for the license of Microsoft Word or whatever the software is. So all of that stays intact because part of the searchable PDF format is it has that header information with it. So that's part of the consideration that the Supreme Court needs to take into the room when these discussions happen is what rules are there around information that's stored with that searchable PDF? And are you accountable for the fact that someone else's initials might be involved in that because you've switched computers a year ago or something like that?
Well, we have a metadata thing just trying to strip it all out, but I was just wondering if we could use that.
You would need to, whatever's in there will go with the document into the document repository. So if there's metadata associated with it, that will travel with the document. That's a great question.
You mentioned verified complaints earlier. Don't we still have to file the originals of certain documents?
You don't have to follow any of these electronic filings with any originals. So that's a big thing. That really impacts the workflow. Not only can you file it electronically, but you don't have to follow it with any original document. This actually becomes the official. So the court decides whether the official is paper or electronic, and when you submit something electronically, that becomes the official record.
Now, with a verification, if it's not your signature or the attorney's signature, you would need to scan that document in, so that you cannot electronically sign for your client. You would have to scan that in. It'd still be a wet ink signature is what they call it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
You'll also need to, if the notary seal, for example, is a raised seal, this is a very low-tech approach to making sure it's visible, but shaded with the pencil. So keep at least one pencil around.
We actually had a debate regarding that internally under the Uniform Superior Court rule, and the rule provides that you as the attorney, basically vouch for the signature of whoever's on an affidavit or a verification. And we debated whether that's wise or not, because if you have an investigator go out and get an affidavit from somebody, how do you know if that's the person's signature or not? So we debated whether, even though the rules say it, whether the evidence rules and et cetera are actually satisfied. So it's not, I don't want to deter from our discussion here, but that might be an entirely additional kernel/litigation fundamentals meeting.
Still plenty of things to talk about, no question about that.
Write your local politician if you don't like these.
Okay, so we have one document uploaded. You can repeat that as often as you need to. If you need to remove one, you can click the big red remove button. But now let's get into some interesting things. Okay, so we have not yet uploaded a case initiation form, although you are required to do so. We haven't uploaded a summons. We know that's important. And we've chosen sheriff's service, but we haven't uploaded a sheriff's entry of service form. So the sheriff's entry of service form, typically triple carbon copy, handwritten, or maybe a typewriter. Forget about all of that. Okay, stick with me. Here we go. First link down here in the second envelope. This is the envelope full of things you uploaded. Here's the second envelope of the things that we created through the software. First one, case initiation form, created entirely for you based on how you answered the questions on the previous couple screens. Okay, so that's good, but that's not enough to really get anyone excited. Pretty good. Okay, next, let's take a look at the summons. PeachCourt generates a summons for every defendant you list. Standard summons form, all clerks are accepting it. You don't have to create those by hand. PeachCourt creates it for you. And for those of you watching this video later, the crowd noise is actually deafening. I don't know if you can pick it up, but
It peaked right over the clip level.
And getting 140 clerks to agree on one summons, we deserve like a Nobel Peace Prize or something for that. So you can send that over.
we have a summons related question.
That does not comply with 911-4H, though. The new summonses like at Fulton County are using, have the language in them for 911-4H because that was changed like 4 years ago.
This, the Council of Superior Court Clerks and the Administrative Office of the Court okayed this form.
But that's not in compliance with statute as far as when the date of your answer starts, because if the sheriff's entry of service is filed more than 5 business days after service, your answer doesn't start until that form is filed.
And so the sheriff's entry of service will get the date on it when it's actually returned to the court. Now let's take a look at the sheriff's entry of service too.
But the summons is issued at the time of filing, and it's not issued at the time of service.
So
And Fulton County has their own summons forms that's in compliance with the statute.
They do have a separate form. And so that brings up a good point about taking direction with all of this. As the custodian of the record, the Superior Court Clerks Counsel, and all of them individually and collectively, have directed us in each piece of all of this. And I think, as you know, the clerk's office is the gatekeeper for filing documents. And so in any situation where they have said, you need to use this form, or you need to adjust it this way, that's from whom we take direction. So I think that's something I know that's something that we'll bring up, just to make sure that they didn't overlook anything in the preparation of
them. A lot of clerks are not even aware of 9/11.
So I think that's a great thing to bring up. We have an obligation to all of you, because we have an obligation to clerks across the state, to make sure PeachCourt is in compliance. And that's not only with documents, but also with case types, with document types, and with fees. So when we get to the next page, you'll see how we display the schedule of fees, and we'll always be in compliance and up to date with the statute.
Okay, just one quick question. Is there a signature from the clerk of the Superior Court that ultimately gets applied to the summons?
It does. It does. So you don't see it here because it hasn't been accepted yet. We'll show you a couple that have been accepted, and you'll see not only the case number, but also the stamp and the clerk's signature. Question back.
Once these documents are populated, can you alter them?
No. And so we've had a couple questions in the past about listing the documents that have been served. That's sometimes a common practice, because clerks have agreed to prepare in the service packet every document you submit with this summons and sheriff's entry of service. They vouch for that all those documents have been served. Also, you get an email receipt that shows all the documents that you included. So those documents are not listed on the summons because necessarily 100% of them are verified by the clerk to be served in that service packet. If that makes sense.
Is that true if a private processor serves a complaint and a bunch of discovery, for instance?
It's not. You do get the email message that shows everything that was included. Of what we've seen so far is that the affidavit needs to cover that as opposed to the clerk.
So this sheriff's form, is it that tripartite, 3-colored form? It's still the same form?
Yes.
So if we have someone pick it up at the court, then we can bring it back and run it through the typewriter and list out all the documents that are being served on the sheriff's entry of service form like we do now.
You could do that, or you could create one on your own. This is really in fact, if you're having somebody handle service, this won't get generated. So this is only if it's sheriff's service. So, sheriff's service, no more typewriters, no more triple carbon. Sheriff.
Wow!
There we go. Thank you. This is something that I think has saved a lot of time, and the law offices certainly appreciate it. The sheriff's office appreciates it as well. They can read it. The clerk's office will print a first original and a second original, and it makes that part a lot smoother. These are not nearly as fragile as the documents that you fill out using the triple carbon. Okay, so we have our, yes ma'am.
So is the clerk's office typing now the sheriff's entry of service forms for the sheriff to serve?
When something's e-filed?
Yes.
No, they use this document that was generated.
And then it prints it out in 3 colors? Or?
No, it does. The sheriff's office only require a first original and second original, and the colors were really kind I think just for ease of use, but the sheriff's office doesn't require colors and doesn't need all three, because one will come back to you automatically, so that's the third one. They'll keep one in their office and they'll serve the other. So it takes the place of it, replaces that triple carbon form. Okay, so we have our initiating document and we have the three that we've created for you. Ready to go next?
Let's do it.
Okay, fees. So a couple of these fees are what you would pay in person if you hand filed or used a courier. You'd have the case filing fee, $207.50 set by statute. If that ever changes, if it ever is adjusted, if it's in a venue that requires an additional payment on your part because of additional defendants, like in Fulton County, we are responsible for getting that to you. If we charge you the wrong amount of money, we will make good on that. And what I mean by that is you won't owe us any additional money if we undercharge you. Now, the clerk's office will probably reject that filing if the filing fee isn't correct. But if we undercharge you, that's our responsibility. So we handle all the funds and get those to the clerk's office overnight, so they don't have to worry about checks and credit cards. You can use whatever method you like. We get the money to them overnight. Okay. So that's one fee. The other fee, the $50 fee, is again what you pay if you were using the sheriff's office to effectuate service. The additional fees on top of that, $5, that's the PeachCourt e-filing fee. So that covers the process of assembling all the documents, generating those additional documents, processing all of the paperwork and getting that to the clerk's office, and getting you back your stamped documents once the clerk's office has accepted it. Pretty good deal for $5. It's actually less expensive than printing and mailing 12 pages. So if you had 2 copies of a 6-page document, if you spend just a couple of minutes preparing that and putting it in the mail, that's certainly more expensive than $5. The other fee you'll see here is $7.91. This is a credit card or check processing fee, and that's applied to every transaction that PeachCourt handles. That's a little bit lower of a fee than you'll see in some other e-filing systems. It equates to 2.9% of the $260-250 plus an additional 30 cents. Now that is banking math that was put in place somewhat a few years ago by the Dodd-Frank bill, and we get charged that, and so we pass that along to you. As volume increases, we may be able to reduce that fee, and we'll certainly pass that savings on to you. Sir?
It's maybe getting ahead of us, but is the e-filing fee, is that on each transaction or just the initiating documents?
Each one. So in a subsequent filing, you won't have the $207.50, you won't have the $50, but you will have the $5. And so the convenience fee on that is a lot lower. It's 45 cents as opposed to $7.91. Okay. You can choose any method of payment you like. Whichever you choose,
I owe you.
You can. Jay will cover it. Jay's good for it.
Your first one is free, actually.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you register, your very first e-filing is free.
You've burned that already.
Sure, it's on complaint of 50 offenders.
Okay, so the client reference number is optional. It's your choice if you'd like to use that to keep up with billing. So this transaction, probably you want to bill it to someone. And so this will give you an opportunity to put in a client reference number, a matter ID number, anything that internally you might use to keep those fees straight. At the end of the month, we'll send you a bill that breaks down all the fees that the whole firm has paid, breaking it down by client reference number, by attorney, however you'd like it to be organized. That'll help you recoup these costs. It's optional, no one else sees it. It'll be in the email messages you receive, but no one else will see it. Okay, court won't see it, no person. We have already added 3 credit cards in 1 bank account. You only need to have 1. So if you choose to just have a firm-wide credit card, or use individual credit cards, or a checking account, completely up to you. You can add new ones or change them at any time. You can add a payment account when you register. You don't have to do it then. It's very convenient to do it when you register. If you don't do it till later, you can do it at any time, including as you're checking out. I'm feeling relatively generous. I'll pay for this one today. Click next, and we'll be at a summary page. Yes, sir.
So it's a draft on a bank account? You can have it drafted right
Yes.
out of your account?
That's right.
But the convenience fee is the same whether you use a credit card
It is.
or the bank?
It is. Yep.
Very good lobbyist from MasterCard and Visa. Got that legislation evened out.
Yep, so we need to do that to be in compliance. Okay, so here we are on the summary page. This is very common in an e-commerce. If you're buying something online, you have the last opportunity to check to make sure that this is what you want to buy and the size and color and delivery method and the gift wrapping and all that. So take a moment to make sure that PeachCourt is going to deliver everything and nothing but what you want to go to the court. You can click on the link to any of the documents that you uploaded or any of the documents we created for you to make sure those really are the documents you want. You'll see an opportunity at the bottom to check to make sure you're paying the fees you expect and also from the account you expect. And then you have a chance to share some comments with the clerk. This is particularly helpful if you've got a complex sheriff service situation and you want to get some notes to the clerk to get those notes to the sheriff's office. If you have a question about how you've combined or separated documents, anything you need the clerk's office to see, please take advantage of this. This is an opportunity for you to essentially send a cover page.
Jason mentioned ago the situation where you may be suing 25 or 30 defendants. And historically, you might have to do a summons with the individual defendant's name listed, because if you list 50 defendants, they're not going to fit on any form. How is that addressed?
So we create a summons for each defendant, a copy for the clerk of each defendant. Of course, it's identical for every defendant. And we will continue to a second page if the text doesn't fit. So you'll never have a situation where you run, and a third page if you needed to. So you won't have a situation where the names that you enter electronically don't end up in the right place. And we'll do a sheriff's entry of service for each defendant for whom you choose to use sheriff's service.
So you'll be able to pull up the summons and see it say to
Yes.
defendant colon and then Sally Sue's name is there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. You can see that when it's generated back on the documents page, and also here you can see it as well.
See right there to the above name defendant colon. All right, so when you've got 50 defendants, is it going to rotate through on the defendant setup there?
It will. So it'll maximize that space that you see, and if necessary, it will continue it on the second page and make the note to see the second page.
Okay, so you're saying all the defendants are going to be listed, so the full style is going to be there.
Yes.
So where is Dr. J. Bland's name going to show up so that you know that this particular summons is for him?
The clerks have directed us to have those summons be identical for each defendant. So the same looking document is generated for every defendant.
But on their sheriff's return of service, you're going to have the individual name of the individual defendant of service.
That's right. Because the sheriff's office needs to be able to note method of service, the results of trying to effectuate service.
So if you see a problem, you just click previous and just keep going back.
That's right.
And fix it.
Exactly. And all the information you've entered will be there. So if you get to this page and you think, I spelled the defendant's name incorrectly, you click previous just a couple of times to get back to the parties page, make the adjustment, and click next. And all the information that you've entered will stay there unless you change it. Okay. At any time, you can click Save and Close. So if you're not sure of the correct answer, you won't lose your work. Click Save and Close. And we'll do that at the end when we do the subsequent filing. We won't actually file it into a real case. We'll click Save and Close at that point. Okay. When you click Submit, you get a final reminder that you have the responsibility to redact any personal information, and that, of course, is not an e-filing rule, that's a filing rule. So assuming you're okay with that, and you click Submit, the filing is on its way to the clerk's office. A couple things happen next. The clerk's office gets a barrage of email messages letting them all know that you have sent a very special filing their way. In higher volume courts, they sometimes dedicate one deputy to focus on e-filing. In lower volume courts, probably everybody working in the office gets an email message and one of them has a rotating responsibility. Clerks have accepted e-filings as quickly as 3 or 4 minutes after they've been submitted. So if you're wondering about the turnaround time, the record is 3.5 minutes, Athens, Clark County.
Go Dogs.
The longest has just been to the next day, and that has typically been because of weather. So in North Georgia, Friday night, a couple of filings were submitted, then the ice apocalypse hit. Clerk's offices were closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. When they finally made it into the office Thursday, they accepted the documents, and Friday, the filing date, was the date and time on the seal, on the stamp, excuse me. So even though the time of acceptance may not be the same calendar day, the calendar day up to midnight, and maybe bad news for some of you who would like the opportunity to keep working late, you can rush right up until the midnight deadline instead of the 5 p.m. deadline, and you still get that same calendar day. You see the Peach number on the screen. This is your unique identifier for the transaction you just completed. You don't have a case number yet, so you can use this to refer to the filing. If you ever have a question, you can call us. You can call the clerk's office. If you give us that Peach number, we can help you find the latest status. You can also find the status by clicking your history tab at the top of the screen. So we'll show that in a minute. Don't let me forget about that one. In the essence of time, we'll jump in to do a subsequent filing, unless you have any more questions. While Jay gets that ready, in Jay's inbox right now, because he just submitted that filing, there is a record that says you have submitted the following to Fayette County Superior Court, and these are the details. Every document you included, the amount of money that you will be charged when it's accepted, all of those details. Okay, so let's do a quick subsequent filing. We've done a little bit of homework, and we have found a case that you might be interested in. Paulding County.
Do you remember the party name for the case you have in Paulding County?
I don't have one in Paulding.
Fayette?
It's in Fayette. It's Richard E. Shelley versus the town of Tyrone.
If I can get my alphabet right, there we go.
It's going to have a lot of stuff.
S-H-E-L-O-Y?
E-E-Y.
Okay, so you can search for any open case, as long as it's not sealed. You can find any open case. So you notice Jay searched in Fayette by the last name, and here's the docket. This is loading. It's taking just a moment. This is the docket as it exists in the clerk's office.
So why does Diane's name have her own old firm name?
That's a good segue into
About to say, for better or worse, this is exactly what's on record in the courthouse. So if you see an error, an omission, a maiden name that you haven't used in 7 years, an old firm address, that's probably the result of the clerk's case management system having a directory that has outdated information. And so you can, when you register for PeachCourt, include all your correct information. When you e-file, that corrected information flows to the clerk's office. This obviously hasn't had any e-filings yet, so it's whatever was on record with the clerk's office.
Yeah, just e-file something and it'll get changed real quick. First one's free. First one's free.
Hey, how's it going?
Motion to change address.
Yeah.
It's had some
Notice
e-filing.
to court that today is Tuesday.
From you though, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's why your information's correct.
And I also note they don't have our suite number. I don't know if that's bad or not. Probably is.
Okay, so down below, so you see the information at the top, parties, attorneys, and so forth. Down below, you see all of those wonderful proceedings and when they were submitted, the type, the description, and you can see all of those are manual. Coming through December 2014 to this year.
You can see every time Henry went on vacation, all those leaves of absence. And then eventually,
on the second page, you'll see some more recent things. So this exists exactly as it is in the courthouse. In fact, this is up to date about every 2 minutes. So if someone were to file something on paper, PeachCourt will be up to date within about 2 minutes.
So
And then e-filing hits and the world changes.
So for the counties that have gone online, they've uploaded all of their docket information into PeachCourt before they say we're open for business for electronic filing.
In the probably 48 hours roughly before we announce to the world that that court is open, We load the latest and greatest, and then we have an ongoing update. Anytime something changes in a case, even if it's years old, anytime something changes, we get an automated, regular update throughout the day. So there's a big bulk upload at the beginning, and then a trickle of upload from then on.
What about stuff that's closed?
Closed cases are also synchronized with PeachCourt, and in about a month, you'll not only be able to search for the docket in a closed case, you'll be able to click on any of those proceedings and view the document, like the PACER system,
How far back?
forever. There are a couple of courts
Like,
that
I
have,
found a case from 1960 something.
that's nothing. We have,
And that's all gonna be up there.
we'll have cases back to 1882, I think is the oldest one. Beautiful handwritten stuff with stitching. They're all not searchable.
So did you win that case or not, man?
The amount of effort that must have taken.
Yeah, I can't
Are there
imagine.
live links where you can see the document?
Can't see it today, it's not open yet. In about a month. If you want it. If you're not interested, that's okay.
And that's all permission based. We've built it and it's ready. We're just finishing up the last details with the clerks to open that up.
Is there any charge to search for stuff?
There won't be at the beginning. So if you register this month, you'll get a couple of months free. You won't have a charge at the beginning to search to see this amount. Now, to view the document, you will have to pay per page, which is very much like the PACER system. But you won't pay any more that you'll pay the same 50 cents per page that you'd pay in the courthouse to make a photocopy. Just have a whole lot easier time searching. And once you buy that PDF, you own it. So you don't have to ever pay for it again.
Even if you don't download and save it, go back and search
You
again?
do have to save it. Yeah, you do have to save it. So we have just a couple of minutes left. Let's do a really quick subsequent filing. You'll see how quick this is. If I don't talk as much, it will be even faster.
So to Ryan's point earlier, if you wanted to provide e-service to opposing counsel, there is a rule for that in the same 36.16. So interpret that as you please. But what we do is we give you an avenue to do that. So by clicking add email, you can add as many email addresses as you would like. And upon acceptance by the clerk, PeachCourt will send the file stamp copies of this filing to those email addresses.
And that's per service. It doesn't automatically do it every time you file
Right,
something.
because e-filing in the PeachCourt world is optional, we can't automatically serve people who may or may not have an email address. So stays manual, but we provide you an option there. If you don't want to print your email documents and then mail them to opposing counsel, you can do it this way instead. And that's completely up to you. That $3 charge is for unlimited entries. So if you do one, it's not as great a deal as if you do 10. So you might as well send one to your uncle and your brother, everybody else.
If you've got some complex case with a bunch of lawyers on it, is there any way to save all this so that every time you file something, you don't have to
So the
manually enter 20 emails?
next time you file into this case, they'll all be listed. So it saves them. If you have to go back and delete some, you can, or you can add to it, but we save your progress from filing to filing. So you do have to add it once, but then never again.
We're working on a connection with the bar directory so that you can look up an attorney and choose his or her address from the bar. Now, all of your email addresses are correct on the bar directory, of course, but there are some out there who don't have correct addresses. So
We did that for 3 months, telling people to make them correct, and we looked at mine and it was wrong. So,
as I said, I'm a civilian.
So on the parties page this time, no need to add anything unless you need to. So we'll just select to represent. What's the right side here? Plaintiff or defendant?
We're the plaintiff.
That's what I thought. So you could change the information if you wanted to, or you could just select to represent them. If you had to add a defendant, you could do that, and then summons would be created for them as well. A pretty simple page when you don't have to add anything. Now that we're on the proper side of this case, we'll go back to documents. Same idea as before, except we don't have any generated documents, nothing we can create for you here. If there was, we would, I promise, but there's nothing we can do. So on this list, really quickly, we'll go to motion, and we will file a motion for summary judgment. To Ryan's point earlier, first page of each PDF gets a stamp. So I have my motion here, and then I'll also have a brief in support of. Those will be 2 separate PDFs, 2 separate pleadings. Each one needs a stamp. So think of it like that way in your head. Does it need a stamp? It's a separate PDF. To Ryan's point earlier, exhibits don't need a stamp, so they're the same PDF as the primary pleading. So I have my motion uploaded here. Next, I'd go back to the drop-down, grab my brief, choose my file, and then click upload again. I'm going to cheat and use the same document twice for the sake of time. So now I have my brief and my motion uploaded. If I had a 5.2 to upload and another motion, I could do all of that in this filing and it's still just $5. As my granddad said, it won't cost you nothing, so go ahead and do it if you have it to file. Any questions on that? I know that was pretty quick.
Sorry, you say you can do a 5.2 with the filing?
Just an example of if you had multiple pleadings to file into this case at this time, you could do them all at once.
So you would just pull up the motion, hit upload, pull up the brief, hit upload, but you just upload each one separately?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the key.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you have two completely unrelated motions that you happen to want to file in the same case on the same day, you can come in here at one time and file them and then pay one fee.
Or you could do it twice and give us $10, but that's completely up to you. So like I said, no PeachCourt generated documents, so I'm going to fly through that. The next page is going to be exactly the same, except it's cheaper, which is good. $5, that's what gets Ryan's haircut, so we keep that money to keep our lights on. The e-service fee of $3, because we chose to enter email addresses to provide e-service to, that line item is present. If you don't add those email addresses, nothing will be there. So you can still provide service any way you would like now to opposing counsel. Convenience fee is a lot lower as promised. Same percentage, but lower subtotal means lower convenience fee.
We have a question.
When you provide e-service through PeachCourt, do you still have to mail a service copy? And the other side doesn't have to agree to that. I mean, they have to accept e-service.
Two situations. One is if they are a registered user of this or any e-filing system, they are by doing so acquiescing to e-service. If they're not registered, you are advised to make sure they're okay with this as a means for service. And they don't have to acknowledge it. We haven't had anyone choose not to acknowledge it so far, but it is in your best interest to make sure they acknowledge that method of service.
So what does your certificate of service say that instead of I mailing it, I'm going to say PeachCourt's emailing it?
You would change that language in your own certificate to reflect how you actually served it. Some people do both, and they'll put, I've provided the following by PeachCourt e-service and by first-class mail. So you would just change it however you served it.
So should we provide their email address in the mailing block form, along with put their regular address and their email address, so it's clear how PeachCourt emailed the document?
Yes, ma'am. And I've seen some really good examples of good certificates of service for e-filing by looking at some Alabama documents. Since they have mandatory e-filing, they have some really good language in those. So if you need to look those up, that would be a suggestion to go look those. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
One other quick question. This may be the dumbest one yet. But on the previous screen, when you uploaded two documents, is there a way to click on that document and look at it and say,
yes,
make sure I've got the right document before I push send?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, like
That's not a dumb question.
We moved past it, but it's really important. When you see that green link, whether it's here or on the summary page, you can click it. And if there were any of the automatically generated documents, you can click and view those too.
You see, that's a really bad one I wrote in law school, I think. I think I quit pretty soon. Yeah, I gave up.
Jay tries really hard to never click that link, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for
Exposes some cobwebs.
Did not get an A on that one, for sure.
All right, I'll pay for this one too.
We provide you with a chance on this summary page to check the document again if you would like. I'm OCD, so I check it. If I was really filing something, I would check it every step of the way.
If you ever have a question at any time while you're filing, call. Toll-free number at the bottom of the page. Jay's phone number is in your bag. Call anytime. We'd be happy to step you through it. I think we have two. You have a question first?
Yeah, how many of those documents under seal?
The rules that are summarized in your bag, but the ones that have been accepted by the Supreme Court for Superior Court say you can't e-file anything under seal, the document or the case. So if the case is sealed, you won't find it in PeachCourt. The Supreme Court allows you to file documents under seal, and so we think probably the trial courts will get to that point as well, but today, by rule, you can't file anything under seal.
So we still have to do that.
You would.
Yes, sir.
And that'll have to get figured out before you file it's mandatory. No
If you have a paralegal or an assistant go through this whole entire process, but you want to take a look at it before the final stuff gets released, would you recommend can you get all the way to this point and save and close, and then someone else logs in, looks at it all, and approves it? Or is there a way for them to just let you know, I'm ready for you to review this? Or
Since it's all within the attorney's account, then it can be saved within the attorney's account, and then at any time, anyone who the attorney gives access to that account can click to actually do the submission. Yeah.
And will these automatically, like if something is filed in the case that when you get that email, is there any way to have it go to your assistant also?
Yes, so every account has, let's jump in there, Jay. In the profile for every account, you have 2 email addresses. One's required, and that's the email address for the attorney. An optional, but recommended and really helpful address is for an assistant, paralegal, billing, whoever you want to include. That second address gets every message that the first address gets. Yes, ma'am?
Is there a way to add more than one? Because we have several people here that work for several people.
So the same address can be included in more than one profile. So if you worked for 3 attorneys, you could include your address in all 3 of those.
No.
But the opposite we can't do yet. So you can only include one address as the courtesy copy right now.
That would be something that we would like to do.
That has been common, and we're building it right now. So that'll be a change you see in the upcoming 1 to 2 months. We haven't decided between unlimited and 10, or maybe some number in between, but there'll be more options.
And that would need to go, I think, case by case somehow, because I may be working with 15 different people.
And you could, if someone's working for you on this case, then they could come into the profile and change it. And then whoever does the next filing, if someone different could go in the profile and change it again. So whoever's working on it could be selected.
So if we e-file something and there are 3 attorneys here at the firm, there's another place where we can have them sent the email, the one where you can send to your uncle.
Right.
You can put the other attorneys there just to make sure they see
Absolutely.
that it's been e-filed.
So it can be used for internal purposes.
Until
as
you
well.
change it.
Yes, ma'am.
Great idea.
Okay. And we'll gladly take that $3. So use that whenever you want to.
So just a moment ago, Jay clicked save and close to your point. In fact, because we're not going to file this into a real case, so Jay clicked save and close, and it moves it into his drafts list. So just like an email message, he has clicked drafts at the very top. This is that list. At any time, if he clicked that link, he would jump right back into the filing process.
So you could review it from the beginning. See, it starts you here at the beginning, but it saves all the progress. So you could go page to page just to make sure everything's right, and then you could click submit.
Okay, and then if you looked at history, what would you see?
Great way to wrap up. So history gives you a look at filings in one of 3 statuses: accepted, pending, and rejected. Rejections don't happen very often at all. If they do, you get an email message from the clerk's office that says, here's the issue. You can click a link to jump right back into the filing process, correct the issue, and submit. You're not charged until it's actually submitted. So the rare occasion something is rejected. Accepted, this is a list of everything that actually has a stamp on it now, so you could use this for account reconciliation if you needed to. What did I file when and how much was I charged? And then the one in the the one in the kind of in-between status is pending. So anything that Jay has submitted that hasn't been addressed by the clerk's office yet. If it's in there, you just got to wait on it. It doesn't take a long time to get accepted. You want to make sure it's in this list and you've gotten your email letting you know that the clerk's office has been sent the documents. When it's actually accepted, you get an email message that has all the details in it, how much you were charged, and a link to each document that was stamped.
Within the courthouses, do the judges now go onto their computer to look to see the docket of the case and pull up everything electronically?
Some.
Otherwise, there's a file that can be carried up on a big cart to the judge of all this stuff.
Yes, at the end of the day, it's really judge's choice on whether they consume this information electronically or on paper. But even if you e-file it, And even if the judge wants it to be reviewed on paper, your e-filing still has the same force and effect of a paper filing.
Except if the judge rules before he sees your e-filing, like it hadn't been accepted by the clerk. Which I guess would be true if
That's a possibility.
For a proposed order, I deal with a lot of these rural counties, and then that's another question. Can we print off the list of counties?
Sure.
Okay.
If you visit PeachCourt.com, you'll see that list.
Oh, it's on
The
there.
paper that's in your is probably going to be outdated in about 12 hours. We add new courts all the time. So some of those that are orange will turn green really quickly.
Okay, so 2 questions. One, is it mandatory in these counties? Okay, that's good. And the other thing is with proposed orders, if you e-filed your motion, do you still send a courtesy copy of the documents in the proposed order to the judge like you normally would? Okay.
Yes. There is an opportunity to select proposed order, proposed rule nisi, and other proposed documents in the list. Those don't get a stamp, obviously because they're not effective yet. Clerk's offices will, and if you can't do it, if the clerk's office won't accept it, you'll know that on the screen. Otherwise, you could submit a proposed order and the clerk would help get that to the judge for signature.
So how do you know if they're going to take it?
The same way it is now. So if the county that you're in now requires you to send a courtesy copy to the judge, you would still do that outside of the e-filing system. So you would treat it the same way you do now. There's only a couple counties that won't accept e-file proposed orders, and when you click on that county, there'll be a big red side button that says, don't file your proposed orders here electronically, they won't take them. So we try to help you out with that.
What would you say are the biggest differences between your system and patient?
Let's see. Other than the tax subsidy, that's pretty big. This is all done without any taxpayer funding at all. The documents that we have available are in the same system as e-filing. PACER is really the document retrieval system. ECF is the filing system. So those two things are related. A lot of people use PACER as a term to describe e-filing. But these two pieces, the filing and the retrieval, are in the same system. So you get a lot of economy of effort in terms of searching and alerts and filing into cases where you've already been. The other is that you can access this whole list of courts through the same username and password. Depending on where you file in the federal system, you may have a separate username and password for Northern District and Southern District, for example. So the idea here is that you've got one username and password, any filer, any case, any court. Not quite at that level, but that's the aspiration. That we want to make sure you could file into any case anywhere in the whole state.
Speaking of aspirations, I can't help but notice that the largest area of white on this map is Metro Atlanta.
You noticed that?
What's the deal with Fulton and Gwinnett and DeKalb, Cobb?
Yeah, we just ran out of ink too. No, that's not like it. You can e-file today in Fulton State Court. In fact, it's mandatory, and some of you may have done that. DeKalb State also has some mandatory e-filing. The rest of the world is wide open. There are several courts that have aligned with or have said we're making plans to e-file with the same system that Fulton State uses. The ones that you see there that are orange have committed to PeachCourt. I think we'll see some movement in that. This will be a diplomatic statement coming up next. I think we'll see some movement in that list, and I think that we feel really good about what we can do for clerks and the judiciary and all of you. You'd be better off if you could use one system to file everywhere. So those of you who have seen PeachCourt now and have used other systems, we'd love to hear what you think. If you'd like this better than the other options you've seen, certainly would love you to tell us or tell somebody else who can do something about it. So the game's not over yet. They're still wide open, and I think way before, it would be probably a couple years before you'd have statewide mandatory e-filing. A lot will shake down between now and then. That's a way of saying something without saying anything.
That's perfect.
Okay, well, this has been a great presentation. Brian, thank you very much. If you were Donald Trump, would you say PeachCourt is really, really good.
It's the best.
Jay, if you could stand up, let's say goodbye. Let's give them all a round of applause.